Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event with the Completed Life Initiative. My name is Sarah Kiskaden-Bechtel, and I'm the Program Director for the Completed Life Initiative. Today, I have the honor to welcome 3 End of Life Doulas for today's special event. Our End of Life Doulas are Adrienne Alote, Melissa Wood, and Nidra Clark. Today's panel discussion will focus on how each of these women experience service in their role as a doula and their personal reflections on the field. While the concept of an end-of-life doula is not new, it has become increasingly pertinent with longer lifespans and complicated end-of-life decisions and considerations. So without further ado, I would love to welcome each of our doulas to offer a brief introductory remarks before we get into questions. And please feel free to enter your questions in the chat. This is a webinar, so the audience is not on video, only panelists are on video. And we are also welcomed and joined by Rachel Bloom, who is our incredible research and policy intern at the Completed Life Initiative. So thanks for being here, Rachel, and welcome to all of you in the audience. Even though we can't see your faces, we know you're there, and we're so delighted for you to be here. So thank you for joining us. And Melissa, would you like to get started with your remarks?
I will. Thank you so much, Sarah, and thanks to the Completed Life Initiative and all the guests that are here. You know, we really appreciate you being here. My name is Melissa Wood. I am originally from Texas, but I'm originally from Wisconsin. I live in Texas now. I have a background in naturopathic medicine, which for those of you that don't know what that is, that's natural medicine, herbs, homeopathy, nutrition. I'm also a licensed massage therapist and instructor. And I was born to older parents and had to deal with that loss really young. When I was still in my 20s, I lost both my parents, and then I had my own cancer diagnosis and scare when I was really young. So just a lifetime of being around other people and myself and my parents that have passed away kind of ultimately got me to where I am today, which is helping people to have a better ending of their life. And in my opinion, that means if they work on accepting that the end of life is going to come for all of us, you know, none of us are going to escape this thing called life, that it helps us live a better life now and a more enriching life now. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll pass the torch on to the next person.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Adrienne, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. So again, thank you for having us. It speaks volumes that your organization will facilitate such an important conversation. And for those who are joining us today, my name is Adrienne Alote, and I'm the owner of You're Not Alone Elder Care. I am an end-of-life doula, which basically means that I've been trained in the various end stages of life. I assist families with the understanding of the natural process of death by providing education, comfort, and support. I prepare people for their last breath. I hold their hand through their last breath, and then I assist those that they leave behind with creating a new normal. I absolutely meet my clients on their terms. I see them as whole and build relations with them and their loved ones. While doing this, I hold space and provide comfort for the person with the terminal diagnosis and their family in a loving, non-judgmental manner. I ensure that they are comfortable, their wishes are respected, and they are, again, like Melissa has said, are living their best life until the last breath. I know that every family is different, and so is every passing. So I listen to what is being said and what isn't being said. and I adjust my services based on my clients' needs. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. And last but not least, Nidra Clark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to Completed Life Initiative. I'm grateful for a platform to educate your community, and thank you for everybody for being here. My name is Nidra Clark. I am a North Carolina native and live in Central North Carolina in the Research Triangle Park area. I am an end-of-life doula, a home funeral guide, an ordained celebrant, and a green burial advocate. I am the founder and lead practitioner of Balance for Life and Death, which is also a registered dementia-friendly business in Orange County. I launched a monthly death cafe to provide my community a safe space to talk about anything death, which helps increase people's comfort level surrounding this typically taboo subject. I co-founded the End of Life Doulas of the Triangle. We're 9 trained doulas who have in part committed to being available for 24-hour scheduled vigil sitting. I am a founding member of a community care group called the North Carolina Piedmont Community Death Care, where a variety of folks such as green burial educator, home funeral guide, I'm the end of life doula representative, 2 progressive funeral directors, and a natural coffin maker and a shroud maker. I have additional trainings in advanced care planning, grief and the quest for meaning, what is green burial, and various end-of-life rituals. My perspective on death evolved when I nearly died at the age of 15. I watched my father die in the ICU when no one was telling us he was dying. When my mother told me it is time for me to die, after emergency surgery left her quality of life obliterated, I was at her side when she chose and used VSED, voluntary stopping of eating and drinking. I was the primary caregiver of my first husband, who received a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. I was 28 at the time, and I am a suicide loss survivor. Each of these deaths, and there's many more friends and family and animal companion deaths, have taught me. I've been drawn to the bedside of the dying since a really young age. I feel at ease while providing them comfort and bearing witness to their transition. While a young caregiver in the mid-1990s, I sought outside support, and I couldn't find any, even in the surrounding larger cities. So it was clear to me that dying people were still living life, and they, as well as their caregivers, could use extra support during their end-of-life journeys. So over 20 years later, when I heard the title End of Life Doula, I thought, hey, I've been doing something like that. And I immediately sought formal training. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of this sacred work.
Thank you, Nidra, and thank you, Melissa, Adrienne, as well, for your initial remarks. I'd like to just turn to some initial questions before we take questions from the audience. I think one burning question that I have is really, what is an end-of-life doula? Would you mind sharing your perspective? Nidra, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were addressing me. Well, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. End-of-life doulas provide non-medical holistic support and comfort to the dying person and their family. I like to say their loved ones, because not everybody has biological family. This includes emotional, spiritual, and practical care, as well as education, resources, and guidance. We assist people in defining their life's meaning, creating a legacy project, and planning for how their last days will unfold. So we guide and support the dying their loved ones through the last days, weeks, and ease the suffering of grief in the early stages.
So I would like to
Thank you.
just piggyback on that. Nidra did an excellent job. And so, as I had shared in my introduction, for me, it's basically preparing a person with an advanced stage illness for that last breath, and then holding their hands and their loved ones' hands through it, and then helping those that they leave behind to create a new normal. And so Nidra did a great job explaining what an end of life doula does.
And I would like to piggyback on both of them, just in adding something for me that I offer as well as kind of patient advocacy services. So that's going to be, if somebody needs, they don't know, they've just found out they need hospice and they're not really sure where to go. I can do that research and find a good hospice organization. I can do the research and find a good home for them to live in if they're not able to stay in their own home, but they don't want to be in a hospital or a nursing facility. Some of us, and myself, particular, I have a thing about doing the Hail Mary treatments kind of at the end of life. And so in my work as a naturopath, one of the things we did was talk to people about, yes, you've got this quote diagnosis, they say it's terminal, but yet medical wants them to try all these various things in a last ditch effort to quote cure them. And the reality is nothing is ever going to cure somebody because we don't all live forever. So it's taking that extra time to really explain to people about their diagnosis. Sometimes medical doesn't do that. They just say, well, here, you've got 6 months. And they don't really go into a lot of detail about what that means. What does that mean? What's going to happen to me over the next 6 months? So it's a lot of, like Adrienne said, education, and Nidra, lots of hand-holding. But it's not just about being with the person while they're dying. We all do that. We all do vigil work while they're actively transitioning, but it's also all these other things that happen before that process. And sometimes that can be a couple days, a week, several months, it really just depends. So that all is going to be encompassing in what a doula is and what a doula does.
Thank you all so much. Melissa, I'm going to mute you. It's great. So really creating this idea of creating sacred space seems to be relevant and so important to what you each do. And I think it might be important to differentiate. I've heard the term end of life doula and death doula used interchangeably. And would you mind differentiating the difference between these two things? Because as you mentioned, Melissa, sometimes this end of life stage can take many months and it's not necessarily a cut and dry experience. So would you mind elaborating on the distinction?
Sure. And what you said is one of the main reasons I prefer the end of life doula title as opposed to death doula, because it's not just about the active dying stage. It is sometimes months, and sometimes people start thinking about this years in advance, which we all think is a good thing to do. We're all big planners here. We will always want to encourage people to be thinking about their long-term plans. And so an end-of-life doula is going to, I've had conversations with people that weren't actually terminal, but they want to know more about the end-of-life process. And for me personally, I don't prefer the term death doula, only because most people, especially here in the States, have a very negative view of the word death. They don't want to hear about death. They don't want to talk about death. End of life is a little softer. And it also tends to have people ask questions. Well, what is an end of life doula? As opposed to a death doula, which they might just think has to do with dying. So that, for me, that would be my answer about that.
Thank you, Melissa. Adrienne or Nidra, would you like to offer your thoughts?
So I have to say, yeah, I have to say, I agree with what Melissa said. I just have a different mindset. I believe they're all the same. And so doulas sometimes call themselves different names depending on what part of the country or world that they live in and how they actually see themselves. And so some names you'll hear are like, Melissa said, deaf doula, deaf midwife, end of life guide, end of life coach. The list really goes on. And so what I would say is to focus on don't focus on what someone calls themselves, but how their service and style and their story resonates with you and how they show up in the world. And so for me, my story is that I always tell people I come from good genes. My grandmother lived to be 106 years old. And she had absolutely really no health issues until the last couple of months of her life. And so her only desire, only wish in life was to stay in a home that my grandfather had worked so hard to build. And so as a family, when she got ill, we really didn't know what to do to make that one desire a reality. We felt hopeless. We had no direction, no guidance, just no real understanding on how to keep her in a home with the medical team and the non-medical team. We watched a quick and steady decline. And when we were able to finally get her into a space that provided that medical assistance, yes, the medical team was in place, but there was no one there educating us on how close she was to death, how we could help her as a family, how we could help ourselves holistically until she took that last breath. I was actually the last family member with her before she passed. And if I had just understood that she was in that active dying phase, I would have stayed that additional hour before she passed. Now, I now know that people choose when they leave. Some want people there and some don't. But as an end-of-life doula, I now guide people through the illness to the active dying process and then beyond, so that they know what's happening, what probably will happen next. What do you need emotionally? Ask the question, what do you need emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and then provide those answers. So to be honest with you, when most people stop showing up because they don't know what to say or do when their loved ones get sick, the families that I work with, they come together and I give them the coping skills to be able to handle that. So again, I wouldn't focus on the title. I would focus on what can they offer you in your time of need. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. I'd love to offer Nidra a chance to respond as well. Nidra, feel free to jump in.
Thank you. I agree with Melissa and Adrienne on many parts. I refer to myself as an end-of-life doula, though sometimes also a death doula. I prefer end-of-life doula because the majority of our work is while we are with the dying, as they live while they die, and their caregivers. And having been a caregiver myself, as you heard me say in my introduction, seeking support and not finding it, I got chill bumps right now thinking about it. I know I see that need, and I want to be there to fulfill that need for the caregivers and for the dying. They live as they die, I'd like to say. Dying is hard work for the one who is dying, for the people who are their caregivers. There's a lot of overwhelm, sadness, fear, longing, regret. We process all of those while they're still alive. So that's why I prefer end of life doula. And like Adrienne said, yes, there are many names. We don't want that to be confusing, but we're all doulas. Just as I like to also mention that birth doulas help expectant parents bring new life into the world. You know, the focus may be the birth. Like for us, the focus might be the death, that transition. But there's so much that we work with before such. Like birth doulas do so much work before the birth. So it's a journey.
Thank you so much, Nidra. You're tying in of doula to encompass birth as well as death and end of life really speaks to what the Completed Life Initiative is all about. This idea of having a complete life, really honoring the whole spectrum of a life from birth until death in the end of life and dying process. I know some of you in the audience are curious about hospice care and how this relates to the work that Nidra, Melissa, and Adrian do as end-of-life doulas. And I wanted to ask, what are the differences between the work you do and hospice care? And to Faith Summerfield's question in the chat, have you ever had hospice care for patients available to provide pain relief if needed? Melissa, would you mind jumping in first?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, hospice is, I think everybody's going to probably agree, hospice is a wonderful organization. I think the hard part that I see with hospice is that people call them too late. A lot of times they get into this process of somebody dying way too late. And I hope that with more awareness and more discussion about death, that will change, because they can be brought in long before somebody's actively dying. But the main difference between hospice and doulas are medical. So hospice is going to have a physician and a nurse. They're going to be involved in evaluating the patient, checking to see if they need medications, administering those medications, particularly when it comes for pain and palliative care. Doulas can't do that. We're not, unless we've got specific, RN training and things like that, we can't administer medications. We can't have access to those medications. That's going to be a hospice medical role. And the other side of that is that hospice, unfortunately, because of budget cuts and things like that, they don't have a lot of time to spend. You might get a weekly visit from a nurse when you're on hospice until you get to the active dying stage. Doulas, on the other hand, are available as much or as often and as frequently as a patient and their family needs. So our support of emotional and spiritual support and guidance and resources is just much more available to the patient and their family than what hospice can provide. And I know these other two ladies are going to have some other thoughts about it, so I'm going to let them take the torch now and continue that.
Thank you, Melissa. Adrian, what are your thoughts?
So I agree with Melissa. I am a hospice volunteer, and so for those who may not know how to reach out to an end-of-life doula, I am still there, able to support. And so as a hospice volunteer, I help them navigate the hospice services. And so I have done 2-hour presentations on the difference between hospice and end-of-life doula. And so I'm going to try to sum it up here. And so the hospice team manages the overall care of the patient. You have a hospice nurse who will teach the loved ones how to do the care when she's not there, he or she is not there. But due to medical, because Medicare pays for hospice, unless you're a minor, but if you're, an adult, if you're, I'm sorry, not just a minor, but if you're at the age of Medicare, Medicare does pay. And so their guidelines only allows the hospice team to be there for a limited amount of time. And so, end of life is not a limited amount of time. It's stretched over time, as we have already shared. And so it's 24/7. And so the end of life doula, we're very similar to the hospice team. We want the same thing, but we're there to fill in the gap. And so when, if something changes, we're able to communicate. We're the eyes and ears for the hospice team. We're able to linger, we're able to communicate, we're able to share with the hospice nurse what we see, and the hospice nurse, as the medical person, makes a change in their medical plan. So we linger. We're, again, as Melissa shared, we're the non-medical person. We just don't have those time constraints like the hospice team does. We have come a long way with hospice and end-of-life doulas. So the national organization that oversees hospice, the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization, actually now has, within like the last year or two, an end-of-life doula advisory council. And so what they're doing, they're actually promoting the awareness and the understanding of an end-of-life doula and its role. They understand what we're doing. They understand that we're there and that we can linger, and we're providing that emotional, mental, and spiritual support. But again, I just want to go back to the goals are the same, to provide that comfort and that care for the patient and their loved ones.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Nidra, over to you.
Thank you. Pretty much everything's been said. Those were full, glorious answers. And I'm really glad that Adrienne mentioned the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization. They did indeed form an End of Life Doula Advisory Council, and it was June 2018, helping educate their members about who are end of life doulas. You know, what are they doing? Are they coming to step on our toes? The answer is no. And their announcement, I'm going to quote, End of Life Doulas enrich the experience for patients, family members, and friends, and strengthen the relationship between medical and non-medical end of life support. The end of life doula profession, unquote, excuse me, the end of life doula profession is evolving like the birth doula movement did, and like nurse practitioners. Remember when they came onto the scene? And hospice itself. So everything is evolving. To just put in my 2 cents about the difference between end-of-life doulas and hospice, which will reiterate what has been said, but we have the time. It's not the hospice workers' fault, and I know they are angels. It's the way hospice is structured. Like Melissa said, and like with my mother, you might have a hospice worker come in once a week and available on call, whereas the end-of-life doula is just by nature much more readily available, able to spend the time. We complement hospice. We work with hospice. We work beside hospice. We are non-medical end-of-life support, yet we can be a liaison between the patient-client, and the medical staff. We're the extra set of ears and eyes, so we can relay, for example, changes that the patient may be experiencing to the staff. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nidra. So you mentioned being a non-medical liaison between the patient and their hospice support team, their medical care providers. So my next question is, how do you guide and support someone who is dying and support their loved ones in creating their end of life plans? Maybe they're not actively dying, but they have received a terminal diagnosis or are scared about their current condition. How do you support them and help them navigate that experience?
I can begin with that one. And so my thought process is, once you become of age, once you're an adult and you make a decision for yourself, you should have an end-of-life plan. If COVID has taught us nothing more than that, we should begin the conversation. It should be taught in school. It shouldn't be such a taboo topic. But I cannot stress enough, education, education, education. Having that proper end-of-life paperwork in order makes all of the difference. And so I work with my clients to document their medical wishes, to decide who's going to make those choices for them if they're not in a position to do so. And I also do something a little different. I create what's called a living well plan. And what that does, it documents not only the medical wishes, but there's so much involved in the life. So it documents their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wishes for the last hours, days, or maybe even weeks. And so I give my clients a choice on what they want to see happen, who needs to be there, what does that sacred environment look like, smell like, feel like. And then guess what? We don't put those papers away in a drawer somewhere. I facilitate family meetings where everyone is on the same page and is aware of what the person's wishes are. And guess what? The next of kin is not always the best person to carry out your wishes. And so it gives them an opportunity to say, I can do this or I can't do it. It also limits the chances of having a family disagreement later. I find that when I say education, that many people are not aware of the medical terms and processes that they agree or deny in those advance directives. So again, I educate on what's involved. You know, there are so many different variables at the end of life, so many different scenarios. And so what you want at 60 may be different than what you want at 80. What you want at 79 and a half with a grandbaby on the way that you just want to lay your eyes on them for one time may be different. So I continue to check in. Once I create an advance directive, I check in with my clients annually. Has anything changed? Let's have those conversations. I also believe that when you do this, things can happen very fast at the end of life as well, as with COVID. And so it gives the people who you have left in charge of your wishes to be less indecisive and less guilt. Did I do what they asked me to do? I even do dress rehearsals of the final moments. And so that gives, again, a dying person's voice, and it reduces anxiety and stress within them and around them. And guess what? Later on, when that's happening, sometimes that can bring humor because they'll remember what happened during the dress rehearsal. And so it just shifts the atmosphere. I also believe that there's freedom and less guilt when a person has their advance directives in place. And so I find that once it's done, that family meeting is done, there's a sigh of relief, which allows for more enjoyment to come back into a person's life. They're relaxed. They're able to be creative. That's taken care of. Less guilt, less anxiety. And guess what? The person who's passing will feel less of a burden. And so to me, that's amazing. To be able to give that, to lessen the guilt, lessen the fear, and lessen feeling like a burden is a gift.
Thank you, Adrienne. Melissa, over to you.
So that was very well said. And, you know, I agree as well. The plan is the important part of this. And, you know, we all, you know, we plan everything else in our life: birthdays, anniversaries, retirement parties, showers, weddings, vacations. You can't plan a wedding in one day. You know, people spend months and years planning weddings and vacations, but yet when it comes to what's going to happen in this very special time, this sacred time, this special, special time in somebody's life at the end of life, nobody plans. You know, they don't want to talk about it. And so the planning piece, like Adrienne said, is so critical to make sure that, you know, their family understands what they want and everybody's on the same page. It saves a lot of arguments and family disagreements later. So having those conversations, which sometimes take hours and days to flush out from somebody what they want that last week or that last day or that last hour to look like, and even the after death part, you know, do they want to be bathed afterwards? Do they want to have crystals around them or flowers bathed on them? There's so many different things. Different cultures do different things. So it's that's important to find out about what they want, and that gets done at the beginning of our relationship with that client to make sure we're honoring every single thing that they want to have happen.
Thank you, Melissa. Over to you, Nidra.
Thank you. I'm just going to add on just a wee bit because so many beautiful things have been shared and spot on. As end of life doulas, we are there to assure the dying and their loved ones that their last days will happen as planned, that the client will not die alone unless they want to. Most people don't want to die alone. Providing the family and caregivers respite. We're there to inform them about what the signs and symptoms are as the person moves closer to death. But in the planning, and I agree with Melissa, it takes time, but it's doable. And I agree with Adrienne, advanced directives, 5 wishes, get it in writing. And the beautiful thing is we have the opportunity to, the dying and their family has the opportunity to do whatever they wish, have what they want, whether it be a Christmas in July or their birthday is really 6 months from now, but let's have it today. In the planning phase, this is where we can explore their life, kind of like have a life interview. You know, what meaning has their life had? This is where we can create a legacy project. You know, how do they want to be remembered, and what do they want to leave their loved ones? We assist in creating those with them. We assist with unfinished business. And I think, Adrienne, you said something too. It's about family dynamics, because there can be some sticky situations. We're not there to fix. We're there to hold space. We're kind of more in the background too. We're actively listening. We're always there in support. But this isn't about us. This is about our client. It is about the person who is dying and their loved ones. So there's many things to have fun with. What songs do you want played at your funeral? What songs or poetry do you want read to you while you're laying there, awake, asleep, or even unconscious? So we all have intake forms where we ask many questions to not only get to know our client, but their wishes. So lots of opportunity for planning.
Thank you, Nidra. I'm going to turn to our audience questions. They're coming in fast and furious. One question that has been echoed by many of you in the audience is, how does a doula charge for services that you offer? And are these services available to people without significant resources? Is there any possibility of the service being covered by insurance? What is it like? Melissa, would you like to start?
Sure. So that's an interesting topic. I can't speak for Nidra or Adrienne, but I know for myself, most doulas that I know are private pay. The patient or their family pays them for their services. Some doulas charge a flat fee in advance, which can be from several $100s to several $1,000s, depending on if they're going to be involved in the funeral process and things like that. I charge hourly. But I also do a fair amount of pro bono work. So for a family that needs services, that needs help, I still work for Hospice as a volunteer as well, just like Adrienne. Those roles are not paid for. So I look at it as, a client that is capable, that has the resources to pay me a fee. Then I'm able to then in turn offer those services for free to another client that can't pay me. I'm very fortunate in my life. I have other massage business and things like that. So this isn't a full-time thing for me personally. I know it is for other doulas, and that's fine. Insurance, boy, that would be great. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think right now a lot of us are trying to get Hospice to reimburse, to take on a doula as a person in their staff. We're trying to climb that hill right now to get, but again, Hospice is going to have the same problem. How are they going to pay for somebody like us if Medicare is not going to reimburse them or insurance is not going to reimburse them? So, like Anidra pointed out earlier, we're at the same place nurse practitioners were before, and, it's coming, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Thank you, Melissa. Adrienne, what are your thoughts?
So I would have to say exactly what Melissa said. My love language is service. I just respond very well to service, and that's what I like to give to the world. And so what I would say is that, Like I do charge an hourly in packages. I have all that set up, but I will work on a sliding scale. If someone cannot pay, I will do my best to work with them. And that's usually ingrained in a lot of the trainings that we offer. We have a sliding scale available. But I think that Melissa is absolutely correct that when I do receive pay for my services, I'm able to go and give. So it's almost like a double give for the person who is paying me, because it allows me to go and offer services as a volunteer other places. So thank you for sharing, Melissa.
Thank you, Adrian and Nidra. Please go ahead.
Like Adrian said, in the training I took with INELDA, the International End of Life Doula Association, it was repeated to us to, and strongly encouraged, to always consider the underserved and those who may not be able to afford our services. So, like Melissa, I do a lot of pro bono work as well, also offering a sliding scale. I charge by the hour for vigil sitting, because with the End of Life Doulas of the Triangle group I mentioned earlier, that's what we agreed upon. I offer individual services, but I have found that so many of them work together and so well hand in hand. I offer packages. As far as insurance goes, I just reminded myself with a quick Google search about, are birth doulas covered by insurance? And some, but not all. And birth doulas, the movement actually began in the 60s, but really didn't even pick up momentum until the late 90s. So I believe we have a ways to go with that. So the answer for now is private practitioner, private pay.
I will just add, though, that those long-term care policies from way back in the day when everything was thrown into them that are not available today, unless you've already had one, do and will pay for, some of them do pay for end of life doula work.
Great, that's so good to know, and I think many in the audience are really curious how this process works. So thank you. So I'd like to turn to a question also from Faith Summerfield. She is curious, how do you deal with extreme pain during active dying and before? At the time of active dying, if the patient is in excruciating pain, do you, for example, with air hunger, do you just get them through? And as in the case of a birth doula, what are your thoughts? Should pain be part of the process? Are there ways that you and techniques that you use and know of to ease their suffering, especially with the ability of potentially eliminating pain and suffering through medication? So how do you deal with this this inherent issue at the end of life, and what are your thoughts? Adrian, would you like to start?
So if I may, I'm like jumping out of my seat here. So you got to refer back to that advance directive, right? Because some people, and that's what I'm talking about, there are different scenarios. And so for some people, if they lose the ability to be present, they're okay with the pain. So it has to go back to what the person's desires and wishes are. We don't want anybody to necessarily be in pain. But again, it goes back to what their wishes are. If they lose the ability to be present, they may choose some pain. I failed to mention that I'm a Reiki practitioner as well. And so I'm able to use my energy healing skills to reduce pain, not only in the person who is in pain as a result of an illness, but also the family members. And so that's a gift that I'm able to give to my clients. The other thing I tell people to do is, the reason why you want hospice on board, because hospice nurses, so they make the medical decision. It goes back, we don't prescribe medicine. So any type of, we can use oils, we can use massage, we can use different techniques. But one of the things that a hospice nurse is able to do that you may not be able to get like with a medical doctor is that they use medicines that are not intended for whatever's going on, but has an outcome. And so that's why I always tell people, get the hospice nurse, because they have a lot of medical solutions to situations like pain or something else that's outside of the pain. So we don't handle the medicine part of it, but again, like the gift of Reiki, energy healing, massage, oils, put in a wet cloth, put in heat certain places. Those are the things that, just some of the examples of how to deal with that.
Thank you, Adrienne. We actually had a question about from someone named Adrienne as well, who is also a Reiki therapist, and she asked, do you incorporate breath work into your work? What's your experience with that?
Sorry, I'm quite sure the other ladies do as well, but I'll just answer that because Adrienne sounds like a nice combination. So absolutely, breath work is helpful. I'm also have the ability to do body scans, and so I'm able to, sometimes you'll go in, as a doula, I'll go into a room and there's a non-medical, the medicine, the science can't determine why this person is uncomfortable. And so as a Reiki energy practitioner, and my medical intuitiveness, I will be able to tap in and find out what's going on. So it could be something as simple as we don't have plans for my dog yet, so they're uncomfortable. I didn't want my adult children to wash me, so they're uncomfortable. So I listen for things that are said and are not said. And so those are some of the gifts that I bring to the table as a Reiki practitioner. But absolutely, doing some visionary work, breath work, can definitely aid and help not only the person who's with the advanced stage illness, but also the family members.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Sarah, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Happens to the best of us. Nidra, would you like to share your thoughts on this? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Like Adrienne said, and to reiterate, we are non-medical, so we cannot administer pain medication, but being the eyes and ears and spending that time with our client allows us to monitor such and relay it to the hospice staff. There are other ways to help ease the pain, along with the energy work and Reiki Adrienne mentioned. I use guided imagery quite a bit. Basically speaking, it's a wonderful distraction, but it's always a beautiful way to help the client relax, to get their mind off of what is gripping them in the moment, such as the pain. It can help the loved ones and family as well. It helps them move more deeply into their internal experience and their feelings. This can also help in the grief process. It eases emotional distress, coping with the grief feelings, and I'm also a laughter yoga teacher, which involves a lot of breath work. And depending on the physical state of my client, we may see about doing a little bit of laughter, and the whole basis of any style of yoga is breath work. So if I can just get a few chuckles even, or maybe watch something funny on the television, right? Then that releases endorphins, and endorphins help with the pain.
Oh, that's wonderful. Laughter yoga sounds great. So thank you. Melissa, what are your thoughts briefly?
So, regarding pain, my personal opinion is we have meds. Hospice is going to have access to all kinds of medications. I think most people are afraid of being in pain at the end of their life. And so I want to reassure folks that they can, sedate you. It's called palliative sedation. And somebody doesn't really have to suffer. You just really don't. The key is communicating and, having, like Adrienne said, having those advance directives filled out appropriately and discussed with everybody on the team and the family so that everybody knows, this is the level of pain this person's willing to put up with. And then after that, medicine's going to need to get stronger if they need to. But we also have our own tools in our toolkit. Just like Adrienne said, I also do Reiki. I do massage therapy, I do aromatherapy, I do homeopathics, flower remedies, crystal therapy, there's a lot of energy therapy, hypnosis. I mean, we do have tools that can help that person to relax and be present if they want to be present. And some people don't want to be present. They really just want to be knocked out. And that's okay too. We have to meet that person where they are and help support them the best way we can. So that's going to be what I think about the pain issue.
Thank you, Melissa. So we have a question from Pat Fisher, and she says that she'd like to know more about VSED, or voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. Has anyone other than Nidra had experience with it? And she'd specifically like to know whether any of you have had experience or are willing to support VSED in a dementia patient. So Melissa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I have had a client that just recently went through the VSED process. And I was there to support her from the, kind of the beginning of her decision making through the end of that process. And I personally absolutely do not have an issue with that choice. I believe medical aid in dying needs to be available in every 50 states. And unfortunately, here in Texas, we don't have that option. So VSED was the only option for this client. It gets a little tricky when you start talking about cognitive changes and, for instance, Alzheimer's disease and things like that. There are legalities and ethical things that have to be considered in that process. But I believe that somebody, when they're cognitively sound, should have the right to say, when I'm not cognitively sound, these are the choices that I want to make. And those choices should be honored. Not at that time, but they should be honored when the paperwork was done, when the video was done, whenever it was that was done in the beginning. That should be the rule for that, what that person's wishes are. And, there's a lot of debate on this issue, but that's my personal opinion about VSED. And yes, it should be allowed in dementia patients for sure.
Thank you, Melissa. Adrienne, over to you.
So I've never actually worked with a VSED or medical aid in dying. I have done a lot of research. That's a tricky question. I think, as Melissa has shared, that legislation needs to catch up where we are and where people's wishes are. And so slowly but surely we're getting there. I would say that as it relates to dementia, that again, when they're able to make that decision, it needs to be well documented. What it looks like, as Melissa has shared, not only in writing, but also in communication, because there are some ethical issues and legalities that we need to make sure that we're not taking away a person's desire or putting ourselves at liability. And so I think that the arm needs to move a little bit in that direction as it relates to the laws are concerned. My winning formula is that I show up ready to serve and to actively listen and to follow a person's wishes. And if they change, to honor that as well. And so if that's the person's desire, I am okay with it. I think it's about education. It's about choices. And if you, and if that is what you chose, then it needs to be honored and respected. To me, that equates to quality of life, right? If I said something, if I believe something, if I lose the ability to share that, it still needs to be respected. And the person, a lot of times we use the word like they're dying, but they're still living. And so if they have a wish, I take it to the last breath and beyond. So in other words, I'm okay with it. I do think as a dementia is a tricky subject. I wouldn't want to take that from someone. I would want that for myself, but ethically and legally, I would just want to know a little bit more information to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Adrienne and Melissa. Another question is from Timothy Quill. He's an incredible palliative care physician. He's been featured in many Completed Life Initiative events, especially in session 1 of our fall conference last year. And he asks, out of curiosity, how does a doula respond when a patient is ready to die now and not wait any longer? Would they differ if they live in a place where physician aid in dying is legal, such as Oregon, versus a place where it is illegal? What are your thoughts? And Melissa, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm just going to go back to my client that I had, and that actually happened here. She made the phone call to her friend in another state in New York and said, "I'm ready to die. Like right now. I've had it. This illness is she had MS. It was advanced. She had a very poor quality of life. So for her, it was like, I'm ready, but she's in a state where medical aid in dying wasn't an option. So the next best thing available to her was VSED. And it took time. It took time to implement that. We had to get her into a place where they would let her do that. A long-term care facility would not. So we had to do research into getting her to a place somewhere that would honor her, and getting her in a hospice that would honor that, getting her surrounded by the things that she needed, the wishes that she wanted. So that's what I personally did in that case. Was the only option to her was VSED, that was legal, and it was something she was comfortable with, and she was on board with, and the family was on board with as well.
Thank you, Melissa. So over to Nidra and Adrienne, and then I'll wrap up with a final question and conclusion. So please, Nidra, go ahead.
To draw attention to the chat, I was able to, regarding VSED, voluntary stopping of eating and drinking, to guide people to the website of Compassion and Choices. For medical aid in dying, check out deathwithdignity.org. In North Carolina, we have Dying Right NC, and many states have their own organizations for such. When my mother was in the position of realizing that her life was not going to be anywhere near what it had been, and this woman had plans. She may have been 80 years old, but she had plans. This medical emergency was unexpected. She chose VSED, and thankfully, her surgeon went to her church, so he knew her. They had a conversation after my mother said, "I think it's time for me to die." I went outside, spoke with the nurse. Doctors come in. They were quite concerned. They didn't want this to happen, but they respected her choices, and I'm very grateful for that. And I've always wondered, what if we had not known the surgeon? How much more difficult would this have been? And in brief, addressing VSED and dementia, I'd have to review it again, but there is an advance directive for dementia patients. And And I would encourage everyone, whatever state of mind you're in, to spell everything out so that you get what you want in your life at the end of your life.
Thank you, Nidra. Adrian, over to you.
So I have so much to say about that. One, everyone should look at Compassionate Choices. It's an amazing website. Two, I want to say that kudos to the palliative care doctor. I tell my clients before you're in a position where you're dealing with advanced illness that you really should know and form relationship with the hospitals that have palliative care departments, because it's just a different type of person-centered care. And that's not to take away from other hospitals, but if you have access to one, I would form relationships, because what people don't realize is that advanced directives are not legal documents. So as Nidra alluded to, is that doctors can not follow your advanced directives. So have those conversations beforehand. As a doula, I think that, no matter which process you go through, VSAT or medical aid in dying, that you should have someone there to support the family, that you should take away some of that weight, whether it's the family or the patient. And, if something creeps up like fear, that you just take them back to remember what the goal is here, really identify what the feelings are and where is it coming from. And if they do decide to change their mind, to let them know that that's okay as well. And so, especially with one who, has the cognitive ability. And then if something goes wrong, if it's not mixed properly, you can guide and direct to that. So I don't know how they, how they don't have non-medical support there, because that's a tough place, but a good place to be in when you make that choice. And so.
Okay, thank you, Adrian, and thank you, Nidra, and thank you, Melissa. I'd like everyone in the audience to know that if you want to see a copy of an advanced directive or specifically a dementia directive, we have those resources available on our website, www.completedlife.org. If you're interested in designating a healthcare proxy, we also have the healthcare proxy helpline, which will connect you to an advanced directive advocate and have a conversation with you about your preferences and values, so that you can document them accordingly. As everyone on our panel today has indicated, communication is key. Communicating not only in writing so that you have a document for posterity and to show other people if you happen to be unavailable, but also to communicate with your loved ones and to really have those conversations. So just a final note before we conclude today. If members of our audience are interested in learning more about what you do as end-of-life doulas and the incredible work that you do and the service that you offer in terms of holding space, and also if anyone's interested in becoming trained as a doula themselves, what would you recommend that they do? And also piggybacking on that question, how can people find end-of-life doulas? Is there a national database? What would you suggest? So start with Adrian.
So thank you once again. And so there is a national database. We have an organization called National End of Life Doula Alliance. Its website is neda.org. Again, I own a company, You Are Not Alone Elder Care. And so because that's a long name, everything is used by the initials. So you can find like myself, or you can go into the NEDA website and look for someone locally. You can also, if you're interested in becoming an end-of-life doula, they have trainers there. As far as if you wanted to pursue this, I would say that most trainers have like a free basic training that you want to sample the basic trainings, because a lot of people are, once something becomes more mainstream, people jump on it and they don't have the right intentions. So sample the training, see how the trainer resonates with you. You can find trainers as well as doulas. And I'm on every social media other than TikTok. and Pinterest, but my tag name is, You Are Not Alone Elder Care. So it's YANAEC LLC. So YANAEC LLC on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. So again, I just want to thank you, and it has really been a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrienne. Over to you, Melissa.
Thank you. So I just want to say too that, doulas as a rule, our role is very much in line with what the Completed Life Initiative, your mission is. We all want to empower the patient at the end of their life and help them get the death that they want, help them to have peace at the end of their life, that they've kind of got their unfinished business done, like we were talking about earlier. So, thank you to the Completed Life Initiative for having this panel, because it's very much in line with what your mission is. As far as myself, my website is called peacefulendoflife.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. I've got a Facebook page also, so I can be reached there. And I would agree with Adrienne, the NIDA Alliance is a great doula kind of organization. The trainers, there's a lot of end-of-life doula trainers out there, just like she said. There is a lot of free training available. You can Google that kind of thing. And again, sample the trainings from 4 or 5 different trainers, because it is all free. And you'll find ones that you resonate with and maybe some that you don't. And then before you've invested the time and the energy and the finances into that training, you'll find the one that resonates best with you. So that would be what I would suggest. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And Nidra, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for everybody in this Completed Life Initiative community. I put in the chat the NIDA, National End of Life Doula Alliance website, NEDALLIACE.org. Yes, there is a directory of doulas there by state, and there's a directory of trainers. So if someone is interested in pursuing such, the resources on that particular website, which is unaffiliated with any organization. This is a nonprofit. It doesn't even oversee the work we do. Again, end-of-life doula is still a budding profession. So we're all learning. But I've found the articles and resources on that particular NIDA website will be helpful for most people who think they may want to seek this work. You're going to have to ask yourself a lot of hard questions. As you may imagine, this really touches our hearts too. But again, it's all about our clients. And I love that Completed Life, the Completed Life Initiative has asked us to be a part of this discussion, because as we work with the dying, we're working with their lives. Birth, death, the 2 major transitions we all have in common. So it's important to honor all of that. And like in the poem called The Dash, that little dash between our year of birth and year of death, that little dash, that everything in between, that's our life. We pay attention to all of that. And I appreciate being able to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidra, and to all 3 of you. It's been an incredible honor to sit here this afternoon and virtually have this incredible conversation. It's been wonderful to welcome you to the Completed Life community so you can share your wonderful gift. And Nidra, thank you for that beautiful metaphor of a dash. I've never heard of that poem, but it really encapsulates it beautifully. So thank you. Thank you to everyone in the audience for submitting incredible questions. It's been wonderful to have you here today. And please check out our website, www.completedlife.org. Our mission at the Completed Life Initiative is to honor the dignity and autonomy of every individual so that they can have a good death on their own terms in accordance with their personal values that they've lived throughout their life. And so we welcome you into the conversation. If you're new to the community, please go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can receive upcoming news about our upcoming events. We are having a town hall featuring Dr. Tim Quill and Dr. Tia Powell on Thursday, January 28th on navigating the relationship of patient-centered care. So we look forward to welcoming you all back to that event. Please check it out. We'll be posting more about that event shortly. And please stay tuned for future Completed Life events. It's been wonderful to spend time with you today. And thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.